an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 366, 67, and 68. You're going down, Absalom. Nami's lightning attack of friendship. Knock him down. Special attack, straw hat docking. And the silent assault. The mysterious visitor, Tyrant Kuma. In these episodes, I knew that Nami was going to wake up and fight Absalom, but everything was better than I ever hoped, and I loved it so much. And I'm going to cosplay Lola. I have to. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. What's up, guys? So, these 3 episodes were delightful. This is one of those things that it's like, I hesitate to even admit, you know how that is? But sometimes, and I'm sure you guys will totally understand what I mean, when I'm watching the show, I can find my attention starting to wander, especially when it gets really repetitive or there's long, drawn-out pauses of people staring. And this was a trio of episodes that had my focus the whole time with no effort. I never had to be like, pay attention. It was just very fun to watch from beginning to end, and I had no issues with that at all. So, the beginning of You're Going Down, Absalom. Of course, we have on Funimation, the screen cap of Nami firing up that, lightning wand. I always forget what this thing is called because it does not feel natural to me, if I remember. But this is a thing that can happen when you've got screen caps and thumbnails and stuff, is that you get a little bit of a spoiler. But I figured probably Nami was going to wake up at one point. I'm just really glad that she got to full-on fight him, mostly herself, other than Lola. But Lola doesn't count. What I thought it was going to be was, she wakes up and begins the fight and something happens and then she, ultimately winds up getting rescued. And it wasn't. She just got to settle this whole thing, and it was great, and I was so happy. Granted, the reason she was actually able to win is because Absalom had gone up against Sanji already, so he was super tired. So, one could say that this wasn't entirely her victory, but I don't care. It's fine. This is what I wanted. Gus says Climatact. That's right. Yeah. And that's not it's not a bad name, but it just doesn't, I don't remember it. It doesn't stick in my mind. So yeah, this whole episode, we start off, first of all, checking back in with Mistress Perona, and I have to say, I absolutely love the energy of what's going on with Perona in this episode, because what it is her waking up from being knocked out, having had really bad nightmares about cockroaches and a giant Usopp, and looking around and then going, fuck this, and heading to the coast with all of the loot she can carry or her underlings can carry, and getting ready to steal a ship and get the fuck up on out of here. And I gotta say, I would like more villain characters to have this kind of energy. This isn't she's not a main villain, so she doesn't entirely count, but we have really only had baddies that want to stay and fight. They always are itching for a fight, really sure they're gonna win. And the idea of her having gone up against somebody, she's not killed, but she's knocked out enough that she's you know what? I'm good, actually. I'm a go. I love this for her. Like, I have to admit, even though I don't want her to steal the Sunny, obviously, I was sort of rooting for her to just get away because she's straight up like, once our big mysterious visitor arrives, is straight up going, I just don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. And I stan a quitter. Okay? This is something that, like, you can go too far in the other direction, granted. But there's a real culture in the United States of, like, never ever quit. You don't give up. And frankly, it's, like, toxic after a point. Sure, you should persevere and not just drop everything at the first sign of obstacles or resistance or whatever. But there does come a point where maybe you should reconsider what you're doing if you just continuously run up against walls over and over again. You know? And sure, there's like probably a lot of examples one could point to of people who, if they had listened to me, would never have had their big break and become famous or successful or whatever. But for every one of those stories, you've got like 50 other people who kept pushing it even when they should have given up and lost everything. And we don't hear about those stories so much because nobody wants to hear about those stories. We want to hear the success stories. But the truth is, there are a lot of people who kept pushing for something that wasn't right for them or wasn't going to work out. And they, every time somebody tried to be like, hey, maybe you should like try something else, back off on this thing and do a different thing, it was like, oh, well, you're a hater, you know, that kind of response. And honestly, I really think that one of the most valuable lessons that my mom taught me, and I'll grant you, my mom's a little bit too much of a quitter, but nevertheless, she told me that, like, sometimes quitting is the healthy thing to do. There are all kinds of instances where if you're in like a bad situation, you need to bail and do what's healthy for yourself. And she says something when she's asked about where she'd go about like singing a cursed song or something. It's delightful. Like, she's just got a real vision for herself. And as much as I'm not fully in approval of creating zombified animals, I will say that I appreciate that her goals don't have anything to do with, say, world domination or enslaving actual human beings or whatever, you know? Now, I am assuming that, like, all of her zombie animals are created by the stealing of shadows of people. So, again, don't approve. But I don't know, maybe she could figure some other way out. Maybe she could find an alternative to this method. So, all this to say, her whole thing in these 3 episodes, I was really delighted with, and I especially enjoyed finding out that she's the one who stole all of the treasure, because Nami manages to, like, get her way out of the whole Absalom situation, and then heads to where she believes the treasure is being kept, only to find out it's gone. And she is so pissed. And there's something about the fact that it's Perona who stole it. I don't know, there's something like the two of them, I feel like, could be kind of friends. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like if they had met in a different situation, it would have been possible for them to connect, because while Nami doesn't really care that much about, like, the cuteness factor, I don't feel like she'd hold it against Perona that she cares about that. And they both like nice things. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that because she's the one that, like, sort of opens this section. And then we jump back to the moment where Absalom is about to try and kiss Nami, and she wakes up just as he is about to kiss her. I appreciate her being like, those aren't even human lips, which I think I mentioned last time, but I really failed to truly, like, think through what it would be like for those to come at your face. Can you imagine? Guys, like, just real quick, sit back and imagine being unconscious and then waking up to that weird muzzle a few inches from your face. No, thank you. I'm good. So she is in the middle of attempting to defend herself here, and he has got her in a grip. And it's really feeling like, all things considered, I don't know how she's getting out of this. And then, all of a sudden, I especially love, "You'll be my graveyard queen. Doesn't that sound wonderful?" And she says, "I don't even know what that means." I appreciate her saying that, because I also was kind of like, graveyard queen? What's that? What exactly does that entail? And it turns out that what it entails is just basically wandering around a graveyard and being in charge of it, which literally, who cares? But this moment is when Lola jumps in, and it's a great bit, because you guys, I was so concerned that Lola was genuinely turning against Nami here. You know, she's got this like real rage on her face and is saying things like, "You told me that you wanted nothing to do with him and that we'd be such a great couple. And then I turn around for 1 second, and when I look back, you're marrying him." It was legit. I was genuinely like, oh shit, you know? And then it turns out that Lola is just trying to help Nami out and is pretending to be angry at her. And we also find out a little bit later that she was not taken in for one moment by the, "Oh, I'm actually a man" bit that Nami was doing. And she says something like, "It was pretty obvious that you weren't a guy," which, like, you know, gender norms aside, I just appreciated that the lie didn't actually work on her. And I liked the fact that Nami felt the need to, like, tell her the truth. Because I sort of wondered, since it looked like they were probably from this moment never going to see each other again, I just kind of thought maybe Nami would, like, keep it to herself and not feel like she has to be straightforward about it, because I wouldn't blame her too much if she just decided to roll with that lie. And yet, she tells her the truth and is like, "Hey, look, when I met you, I was like afraid of you. So I said something that I thought would get you to leave me alone." I love that, Nami. Thank you. Like, that kind of honesty it's even more important when it's unnecessary in some ways, you know? I'm sorry, you guys. If you can hear Sam, he's freaking out because I put him in his crate, which he does not like. And I know that there's all kinds of training methods to get dogs to like their crates, and I have tried them all, and it has not worked. So we gotta do what we gotta do. He makes these sounds that really, truly break my heart, though. I am not going to lie to you. I act all cavalier about it, but I am crying inside. So, okay. This fight with Absalom. First, we've got the Lola fight and him just yelling at her to, like, back off. And then he hits Lola and really hits her. Like, she goes down in such a way that I actually thought she might be dead. And I was really concerned because I had grown to really like her so much. And if this asshole killed her, I would not have gotten over it. So thankfully she's still alive, but I was just, the way that he treats her, I hate him so much. So when Nami sees Lola go down, this lights the fire in her. She had been about to get away, and maybe if she hadn't stopped, she would have. She maybe could have gotten out of this room and would have been able to just, like, move on and left Lola there. But instead, she's like, "You know what? Fuck this guy." And she turns around and decides to engage with him again. Now, I'm going to mention, when he takes Lola out, he is sweating and shaking. Like, it's very clear he's not doing super well. So the fact that she manages to completely level him winds up being, like, less surprising when you take that into consideration. But yeah, when she turns around, he initially thinks that, like, she's decided to marry him after all. This is the conclusion he's coming to. She's standing there with, like, a weapon in her hand and a frown on her face and a hard stare. And this guy is like, oh, good. I'm so glad that you've come to your senses and that you're going to marry me after all. And Nami is like, yeah, about that. And she says, how dare you? I love it. I love this whole bit. And she goes in and electrocutes him. And she says, I know this isn't enough to beat you, but I'll be damned if I don't try. And then the man just falls fucking over. And she's standing there like, wait, what? And I think it's the priest, the weird zombie priest, who's like, oh, he had his ass pretty well kicked by that other guy, so I guess this isn't too surprising. But in his, like, fantasies, it's such a weird bit, you guys. He falls down, and then we get this, like, drawn out Absalom is imagining the wedding to a very excited and happy Nami who's looking forward to getting married. And I was thinking that he was going to fantasize about, like, the successful wedding. But even in his little dream after getting knocked unconscious, he only gets to the part where he has to kiss her, and then she zaps him, even in the dream. So, it was a weird thing to add, to have us, like, see this whole thing to begin with, because it's not like he was unconscious when she nailed him with the climb attack. He was wide awake. So they're, like, kind of retconning within the moment that he was unconscious and interpreted that hit as the kiss or something. It's a weird thing. I didn't really they don't really do this a lot, you know? Like Perona being inside her dream where she's being attacked by Usopp and everything. All of that was already kind of the first time I think that we've ever been inside the weird fantasy of a villain. But at least that made kind of sense, because she was dreaming that she was still in the clutches of the thing that had basically caused her to pass out to begin with. And this, it's like, we're doing it again so soon after the other one when we've never done it before that I recall. And it's the fantasy starts before this thing has happened to him. It's just a weird setup for it. But anyway, Nami goes over, talks to Lola, and then Lola has this moment of, oh, I see him, and it turns out that he is totally helpless right now, so I am going to take advantage of the situation. Now, guys, you all know how this is, and I'm just going to say this for those of you who are not super familiar with Unspoiled and don't know my politics and everything. I don't want to hear, oh, it wasn't cool when he was trying to forcibly marry Nami, but it's so hilarious when Lola is trying to forcibly marry him. Oh, it wasn't cool when he was trying to sexually assault Nami, but when Lola's trying to sexually assault him, it's hilarious. First of all, it's just so not the same that I don't even know where to start, because it's just not. One of them is a genuine thing that happens to women being, like, harassed and stalked by men who are super gross and attempt to do things against their will. And the other is a crazed zombie creature that is just, like, outside of any real scenario. But also, it is just funny. I'm going to be real with you. It's fucked up. I don't love it. Were I telling the story, I would handle this differently. And I will admit that I had some qualms about the moment where she's apparently, like, tossing him around the room and saying, we'll finish the destruction that Oars started and break the building with our love, because the suggestion there is that basically she's, like, raping him so hard the building is going to fall down, which is awful. It's awful. That said, I hate him. He's terrible. And her just deciding to dish out some of what he was prepared to dish out doesn't bother me. It just fails to really get me in any sense. So, for me, I appreciated this. And I will also mention that when Lola tries to tell him that Nami is a man, he has the memory of like watching Nami in the shower, and then we have to go through all of that again. And so the fact that we get to see him like perving on her and being super gross sort of added an extra layer of insulation between my moral center and what happens to him. Does that make sense? So anyway, this whole bit is just great. And like I said, I really, really want to like figure out a Lola cosplay. I don't know how it would work, and I am a perfectionist, so I think I would make it pretty complicated because I really want to get that face right. Her face is crazy. That would take some real work, but I feel like that's a pretty fucking good cosplay. So, okay. We're going to jump back to Luffy really briefly. There is not a lot of him in these 3 episodes. We've just got him running around in the woods, and he thinks that he is chasing, what is it he calls him? A fat onion, I think is what he says, which is so good. But he thinks that he's chasing Moria, and eventually at the very, very, very end of the 3rd episode, realizes that he has just been chasing Moria's shadow, and he is really pissed off. So, honestly, I don't feel like I need to go that much more into what's going on there, because it's a lot of him running around and chasing this shadow, and there's just one little bit where 2 dudes who I think they were guys who got their shadow stolen are watching as Luffy like disappears into the woods, and they're wondering what the hell he's doing, because he said he was going to the castle to fight Moria, and now he's just out here in the woods. And as they're in the middle of like wondering about it, they turn around and there's Moria. And Moria says something about how like, I can't believe you even thought he would win against me. Maybe you're going to have to kick my ass instead. Maybe you could give it a try. And I appreciate every time the camera sort of pulls back and allows us to see how fucking enormous Moria is, because this man is... These guys come up to like his crotch. It's hard to say because he's got a weird body. So I'm not totally, but they are extremely small in comparison to him. And he is fully aware that these guys are in league with Luffy and is just like, oh, you thought he was going to save you. Well, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to watch your precious little savior get pounded into the dirt. That is most of what's going on with Luffy here. So then we're going to go to Oars. There's a point, you guys, where Oars is just looking for anybody because they're all sort of hiding. And he's peering through the window of the castle and just decides to like poke his hole through the wall, or poke his finger through the wall. It's not even like he's attempting to really like get in, because he can't see anybody. He's not really trying to reach anything. The vibe that I get from it is almost like what's it called? When somebody is really sort of absent-mindedly dragging their finger through like the icing on a cake or something. It's not even like there's no method to it. He's just doing this because he's just fidgeting. And because he's so enormous, I'm going to keep using that word, this fidgeting is incredibly destructive. And I just couldn't help thinking about how it would feel for me to be sitting in a room and see like a finger that size just come crunching through the wall. That is so scary. So we go back to like the rest of the Straw Hats who have gathered up and are trying to figure out what they're going to do about Oars. And there's a kind of funny bit here where they're all trying to remember what his name is. I think that it's Chopper that suggests his name was Hughes. Sanji says Roars, which actually isn't a bad name, all things considered. And we get a really weird... As they're discussing this, we get some weird close-ups on our friends, and like I really want to know, I'm really curious how these animators decide what feature they're going to zoom in on for any given character. Because, you know, we start this off and we just see like with a regular background the feet of each of them walking by, like from the hips down. Then we kind of get a whited out background, and then we go to Sanji first, and we see shoulders to eyebrows and signature cigarette smoking sticking out of his mouth. We go to Robin, and we're zeroed in on her garters as she's walking with the edge of her hemline and the fishnet stockings. Then we go to Zoro, and he is tying a bandana around his head, and so we're zeroed in on the knot as he ties it at the back. We go to Chopper, and it's just his eyes and a shoulder, and mostly his hat. And even Usopp, we get from basically bridge of the nose up, really dramatic hat, goggles, that like dark shadow over his eyes, and it kind of makes him look like a badass. What we get for Frankie, though, is just his crotch. We are just completely zeroed in on Frankie's bikini briefs, and like pretty close up, guys. The bikini briefs are really high on the screen, so we've got a lot of thigh happening, actually, and he is like right up in our faces with it. For what reason? Come on now. Look, I get that him being in this like weird bathing suit thing is part of his signature look. I am 100% behind it. That's fine. But it's not the only part of his look that's really striking. His hair, I would argue, is even more memorable. And his weird nose. And even his eyes are pretty intense. And, you know, not for nothing, but despite the fact that Frankie is a cyborg, his legs are not impressive. This is not a man who really bothers with leg day. He is an upper body strength type of guy. So, to me, the choice to zero in on the briefs at the expense of all of the other things about him that are a lot more noteworthy, in my opinion, is bizarre. But I will say that I do kind of appreciate, at least, that he gets a crotch shot, because that at least makes one male character who got that kind of shot other than Robin, because everybody else were on their faces mostly, you know, except for Zoro, but still it's his head. It's just the back of his head as he's tying that knot. So if they had zeroed in on Frankie's head, I'd probably be a little bit salty over the fact that apparently Robin's face is of no consequence, and all we need to know is of how short her skirt is. I just think the choice for Frankie seemed odd. And I'm also 100% behind showing Robin's face. Like, why are we doing her skirt? Why are we even doing that? That's not a thing it's not like a part of her weaponry. It's not a type of part of her personality or anything like that. So anyway, it just struck me because like this sort of really slow walk while they're trying to remember Orz's name, it's like a pretty striking moment, and the whited out background as we zero in on each of them, they do things like this a lot in the show, but this felt kind of set apart for me. It was a much more high impact version than some we've seen. So I really wanted to mention it. Okay, so this is when we have Nami going to find the treasure and finds that the place has been completely cleaned out. We jump back over to Oars, who is really excited to get into this fight. And everybody is just standing, waiting for him. And there's been a kind of consensus with the whole Straw Hat crew that, like, we played around with him, and it's time for us to get fucking serious about it. And Zoro says something about how he's sick of being thrown around. How about we throw him around for a change? To which I think almost everybody except Usopp is like, yeah, I'm on board. Usopp is the one who's like, how, guys? He's fucking huge. What are you even, how do we do that? And they're thinking about how they're going to approach this. And Frankie says, I've got a ton of plans. One of them has got to work. So we get then this bit here. You guys, this was, oh man, this really got me. So first, Luffy attacks them with Gum giant butt stomp. I fell out laughing. He just basically cannonballs down. They all think that they know what his moves are going to be. And he just pulls out something that is brand fucking new. And after all of this sort of like, oh, we got to figure out how we're going to approach this, we're not playing anymore, he really does a bit of a number on them yet again. And finally, Frankie is like, all right, guys, heads up. I'm going to do something new. Tactic 15. Everybody grab onto leg, arm, whatever. I thought it was interesting that when he says Tactic 15, Chopper says it's still being tested. So he's aware of it. And I guess they're just practicing it on the ship. But anyway, what we get is such an anime moment of Frankie connecting, docking with each of our friends, right? So he has Zoro and Sanji each attached, docked against his leg, which when they say dock, all it means is that his foot is on one of their shoulders and he's holding Usopp in one hand and Chopper is over his head. And I'm watching this zeroing in on all of our all of our friends. And I'm looking like waiting for Robin. And I was thinking as they were doing it, this doesn't feel like something Robin would be excited about. And there's a bit where Chopper points out, we're incomplete. Robin hasn't docked with us. And guys, this just slayed me. I loved this so much. They're like, Robin, come on, you've got to join in. You've got to dock with us. And Robin is just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. They're like, Robin, we need you. No. I am not embarrassing myself like that. Oh my God. You guys, she says, as human beings, you should be ashamed. Never ask me to dock with you again. And even Oars is watching, going, why won't she do it? Which is what gives Usopp the idea a little bit later. He's talking to all of them and he's like, you know, I noticed that even though this meant that we couldn't fight Oars the same way, he wasn't glad. He wanted to see the robot. And so that points to the fact that there is still a real Luffy-like personality in there, actually. So yeah, this is when Oars is like, do it, you jerks, do the docking. And he like punches all of them and sends them all flying again. And Zoro says, I've never been so relieved to be punched before. That really was so embarrassing. Oh God, I loved this so much. I love that Robin is just going, nah, man. Like, all that went later on, Frankie tries this method again. And it really is as nothing as it looks like. I was thinking that there was going to be some sort of mechanical aspect that Frankie had invented that would connect them all and turn them into like a proper weapon. But it turns out, no, he's basically just like, doing this will make us big, and because we're bigger, it'll be easier to fight him. And it's not really true. Like, they're still so small in comparison to Oars that they're like standing on his forehead and they don't even reach his hairline entirely, you know? And when they start kicking him, it does nothing. It's just like a red. I mean, yeah, it's not impressive. It's not great. So that whole bit was pretty funny, and I just love Robin standing there being like, oh, babe, no, absolutely not. In the meantime, as all of this is happening, we find out some key info about Brook. He got injured pretty badly, so everybody else is going to go deal with Oars, and Brook is going to attempt to find a way to pull himself back together. And he's in the kitchen and finds a bottle of milk and is super excited because it is only like a couple of days expired, so it's still probably fine. And I will confess to some shivers of disgust when he says something about how he'll drink down all the chewy chunks on behalf of everyone. He says something like horrible like that. I was like, oh, sir, can you please not? And he drinks it and starts to glow. The calcium's rejuvenating all of my internal organs, which is odd since I don't actually have internal organs. And then begins to laugh. Camera pulls out and he yells, I am refreshed. Now, I don't think what I just said really does justice to the way he says, I am refreshed. Because, friends, he shrieks, I am refreshed, like it's a battle cry. It is really something. Voice actor doing this must have had so much fun. Because it is, I mean, the performance on this particular scene is over the top. And I'm not upset. I liked it. It was great. So after he says, I am refreshed, he then like kind of cowers for a moment and is like, oh, it's too much. But then reminds himself, now I have an important job. I need to find what I actually came here for. And I was sort of wondering, if he drank that milk, if, you know, we have some cracks across his face, like, you know, his skull breaking and stuff. I was thinking that maybe we would see those reseal. That does not happen. And I don't know if that's going to happen eventually, but he seems to look pretty much the same. It's just meant to be an internal change, I guess. And he goes into the pantry and finds this giant bag of salt. And I do appreciate him asking, you've got to wonder why they even keep this stuff. Which I have to assume it's just for like the human peoples, right? But I maintain that being on like a boat surrounded by salt water, probably not an awesome idea. Anyway, so yeah, he's got that sack of salt. That was the size of like a couple of duffel bags, I think. So that was definitely enough that if they poured all of it down Oars's throat, I think that would have to work. So anyway, we've got Zorro asking Robin for help with a like submissive hold on oars, while Zorro comes flying forward to get him with that like basically huge nunchuck made out of a pillar. Speaking of pillar, we then get a really gross bit from Robin again. I know that it's kind of got to be gross. Anything that Robin can do is going, they're all like, every formation is flesh colored and everything is made of hands almost always. Like sometimes it's not, but mostly it is. So by default, it's all creepy. Like there's just no way around it. But this one, I don't know what it was. This one really got me, guys. This one was super creepy. She calls it Big Tree and makes this huge, like, it almost looks like a hand at first, but it comes down almost like a snake around him and grabs one of his legs and arms and sort of pulls them both up in such a way that he can't keep his balance. And as he is stuck in this position, Frankie builds a stairway in the moment to the top of Ors's. I mean, you guys, this whole bit with that Frankie can just like build anything within the I truly love this bit. I am very much looking forward to seeing this played out in other ways. And him and Chopper both punch Ors with what they call the Frapper Gong, which is a truly impenetrable name. Like, I don't know what that is, but that's what they both said, and I see it in the subtitles. So this leads to Ors going down for the moment, and we have a bit of a POV from the other zombies on the island who are seeing Ors's feet in the air and just sort of like, does this mean that he got taken out by somebody? And another zombie being like, of course he fucking didn't. He's enormous, as we all know. He, like, this has got to be part of how he's fighting. And they're like, yeah, but his feet have really been there for like quite a while. And as much as they are very happy with the fact that they get him taken down, he gets back up again and they have to work to get him down yet again. So I'm going to jump back over to Nami real quick because she is grilling these two little squirrel chipmunk guys asking for information. They are coming at her with like, you know, cleavers and stuff, but she just electrocutes them in midair and you see their tiny little like skeletons. And one of them says, we said way too much. Like when we come back to them, they're laying on the ground gently smoking. And it's clear that she had just finished questioning them and has headed off down the hall. And both of them know that they kind of fucked up because not only did they give her information about how Perona took everything, they told her that Perona is stealing the Sunny and apparently also told her that there's like a shortcut to getting there that if she didn't have it, otherwise she probably wouldn't have been able to make it in time. But yeah, so Nami takes off and she is heading over there. I love when she's crossing the bridge and she's like, this bridge is weird. It's really well made, but it doesn't go with anything else. And as she looks over, Ors topples and she just tells herself, that is not my problem right now. And she keeps going. And I admire that. That's good priority keeping, you know? Like, honestly, when it comes down to it, even if they beat Ors, if they let her, Perona, sail off with their ship, what good is it? Like, somebody needs to be on the keeping of the ship, you know? So this works for me. So Ors gets real pissed about having been knocked down and is just like, all right, screw all of you guys. I'm going to get up and beat the shit out of you. And it turns out because he fell on the ground upside down, his horns are stuck in the ground. And then we get a real slow pan, again, guys, from face to face of each of this crew, smirking in a real mischievous sort of way, going, "Oh, really? Oh, you're stuck? Oh, that's too bad." But what I loved about it was all of them are like smirking and smiling to themselves, except for Robin, who's got no expression on her face. And all we get for her, like from her, is a, that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. I want so much for this to be enough. I really do. But I feel like, you know, the moment, for example, when she refuses to debase herself by having her join into the docking, it sets a real tone that I enjoy a lot. She takes herself super seriously. You know, she's got her dignity. She's not doing that. And this technically falls within that same theme. Her just like not cracking a smile and just sort of humming to herself. That does work. But I don't know. You know, I feel like something more could have been done. Just little moments like this where I feel like I get what they're going for, but it just doesn't quite hit for me. And there are times actually where having somebody who does take themselves really seriously, act extremely excitable about something, can be even better because they are out of character for that moment. And so it can be like extra effective, you know, that you know they're really excited because they're sort of getting giggly for a moment. But anyway, I just had to mention it because each of them like having their, "Oh, really?" And then again, slowly walking forward. This was pretty funny. And you've got Oars with his mouth open, watching them all head in his direction. And he's just like, "Oh shit, what are you going to do to me?" And they begin to like beat the hell out of him. Once again, all of these other zombies on the other side of the island can only see it, but they don't understand what's happening. And one of them is like, "I don't know. He's screaming a lot. I feel like Oars is getting his ass kicked." And one of the zombies says, "Maybe that's just the sound Oars makes when he kicks ass," which did make me laugh, actually. And then all of a sudden, Oars is upright again, and he is screaming at our friends who have decided to turn and run for cover. They got him for a little while. Was not enough, though, friends. And, then we have another retry of the docking thing. And it's a really well done. The way that this goes, again, of course, Robin is like, "I told you never to ask me again." So she will not participate. I think this time Zorro won't go for it either, if I'm not mistaken. But oh my God, you guys. There's a moment where Sanji is imagining what it would look like if Robin was docking, and the camera doesn't fully pan over to her. Is it supposed to be that she's just got her like legs wrapped around Frankie's arm, and that's like hot? Is that supposed to be the joke? I was just sort of puzzled by this, but anyway, so Frankie gets into position and he's like, "Come on, everybody, let's do this." And they jump up onto Oars's face. I think Zorro is doing it. I think he is. He comes running up to Sanji and says, "Can I get a leg up here?" And I know Sanji participates, and then he's like, "Never mind, this sucks." And then, of course, when it does turn out to sort of work, he's like, oh, this is my idea all along. Oh, okay, no, Zoro doesn't. He stays on the ground, and Sanji just, like, launches the three of them up there. So they get up there, and they are doing the kicking and punching, and it is nothing. And then we have them starting to just basically, like, roast him. They are just roasting Oars. And I think Usopp says something like, "You're the world's biggest joke," something like that. And they just get him so fired up that in order to shut them up, he punches at them, but reminder, they are on his head. So he punches himself in the face and knocks himself out. And Oars is very mad, feeling like he got tricked, and this was, like, totally uncool. How dare you? Like I said, Sanji is on the ground talking about how he planned this whole thing. I knew this was going to happen exactly this way. And the whole, like, Oars falling and the slowness of it, and how he's, like, toppling, and as he's falling saying, "Oh, I'm falling again." I was just loving it. He stops himself from falling. He does not fall. You guys, this creature is too much. So this is when Usopp is like, wait a second. He's still got Luffy's personality. What if we distract him by saying there's some meat over there? And everybody's like, I don't know, but okay. And they do it, and it works like a charm. And this means that our guys, while he is, like, totally distracted, just swoop in and break his kneecaps. Which, I can't tell. It looked like he was sitting, basically, but I couldn't tell. He winds up, like, picking a fist up and starting to do his gum whatever. And this is when Zoro comes at him and says, "A dinosaur could step on this blade and not bend a millimeter." They say that its resilience is one of the, like, signature aspects of this blade. And then we get the beginnings of the fight between the two of them. We don't get to see the whole thing, because this is when we jump over to the boat where Perona is hanging out, and the fucking other warlord of the sea shows up in the midst of Nami, like, talking to Perona and being like, "Hey, what are you even doing here?" This guy is so different. He's got a real different vibe. First of all, he's wearing pants that are white, but kind of look like they've been splatter painted, but in that very deliberate way that things in the 90s were splatter painted. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's not, like, multicolored. It's just, like, blue. Then he's got us, like, polka dotted. I guess it's not splatter paint. It is a pattern. It just doesn't look like it when you get in real close. But his name is the Tyrant Bartholomew Kuma. And Perona says something about all these atrocities that were committed under his watch. And of course, he's got this humongous, like, helmet on that hides his eyes, and a really square jaw, and a really angry expression. And everything about the vibe of this guy says that he is nobody to fuck with. And he's carrying a book under his arm that is marked Bible, which, odd choice, but I guess. And he asks whether she's working with Moria, and she says she's trying to escape, and that she wants no part of this anymore. And the warlord asks if she could go on vacation anywhere, where would she go? And it's said in a genuinely curious way, like he wants to know the answer. And his voice is really, like, high-pitched isn't quite the right word, but it's not wrong either. You know, you expect this dude to have a sort of booming bass note, And instead, he's like maybe an alto. He's not even like a tenor, you know? And when she answers his question about like a cool haunted castle and everything, all of her people are like, we really liked your answer, Mistress Perona. But yeah, she says, I was taken aback when I realized who you were, but I've got nothing to fear. With my devil fruit powers, there's nobody that I can't take down, and that includes you. So she gets into position like she's about to fight him. But he's just looking through his Bible. Just leafing through it. Not entirely clear on what it is he's looking for. And she raises her hand and is like, all right, special hollow, here it comes. She does not appreciate being ignored. Because he's just not responding to her at all. And all of these ghosts come at him. And he just ungloves a hand. We don't even really see the action. We see the glove come off, and then we see him standing with his hand down now, and a little smoking puff on the ground in front of him. And then he says, before you started with this, I was just going to ask you where Moria is. And then I realized, I thought he had just knocked out the ghosts and that they had disappeared. But it turns out that smoking spot on the ground was where Perona had been. She's gone. And when everybody is like, what did you do with her? What happened? He doesn't answer. He just turns his head really slowly, and all of them panic and begin to flee. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, I thought that he just destroyed her ghost, but she's just... What? Where did she go? Can he like teleport? I mean, he does. He's standing on the dock. Nami looks down. He's not there. And then he's up somewhere else. And she wonders about him teleporting. And I'm wondering if he can teleport Perona by touching her. And, you know, my instinct, of course, when he reaches out and she's fucking gone, is that he destroyed her somehow. But I don't feel like that's likely. I'm thinking probably he like put her somewhere to get her out of his way for the moment, because she was about to try and fight him and he just wasn't interested. So Nami is like, well, what are you doing here? And he again teleports downstairs and is like, what I'm doing here is none of your concern. And very calmly walks on, and Nami watches after him and is like, I had better go and warn Luffy. And I'm like, I don't see how you think you're going to outpace the man who can teleport, Nami. Like, I understand the impulse and I appreciate the thought, but I just don't really feel like there's any point to trying to warn Luffy about a man who can travel that quickly and soundlessly. That's just a losing battle. You're not going to beat him unless you already know where Luffy is, and I don't think she does. But anyway, we jump back to Luffy finding out that he's been chasing Moria's shadow this whole time and not even actually Moria. And that is the end of the episode. So, all right, I am going to wrap up. But thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me, for your patience, those of you who were here when my dog peed on the floor and I had to take a moment to clean it up. Sorry about that. And if you're just listening, I edited that out. You're welcome. All right, everybody. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.